person. And joining us right now, Hans von Spakovsky, former commissioner of the Federal Election Commission and also a senior fellow at Heritage. His book that he co-authored there with John Fund, Obama's Enforcer, Eric Holder's Justice Department. But also, Hans, you've co-authored a lot of books about election fraud, election laws, and just the state of voting in America today. So thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Yesterday, President Obama was in Cleveland, Ohio, and as opposed to the other Cleveland.
Yeah.
And
last time I checked, it was in Ohio.
He made a startling statement here that I would love for you to respond to. Here's the statement.
In Australia and some other countries, there's mandatory voting. It would be transformative if everybody voted. That would counteract money more than anything. If everybody voted, then it would completely change the political map in this country.
Well, now that last little phrase there may have been his tell there. If you're playing poker, he just sort of lets you know exactly what his agenda is. But he went on to say, you know, maybe if you don't vote, you get fined or something. What's wrong with that, Hans?
Well, in fact, listen, when my wife heard the news, she said, "What are we now, the Soviet Union?"
Yeah, this is a third world nation kind of thing, isn't it?
It is. Listen, we should encourage everybody to vote, but voting is a fundamental right, and you can't be forced to exercise that right. And look, the Census Bureau does a survey after elections, asking people why they didn't vote. They go after non-voters to see what caused them to act that way. The vast majority of those folks say they didn't vote because they're not interested in the candidates, they don't like the candidates, they don't like the issues. And we're going to force those folks to go out and vote? Not voting itself is frankly making a choice and sending a message.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hans. And by the way, we would love for your voice to be lent to this conversation. 888-630-9625. President thinks there should be mandatory voting. Where do you stand? 888-630 WMAL.
I think you make a good point. I mean, when you cast your vote, you're sending a message that you like a certain candidate, you like that candidate's positions, and that's why you voted for him or her. When you don't vote, you're also sending the message, I don't like the options that I have.
No, that's exactly right. And like I said, the Census Bureau surveys demonstrate that. Look, the other thing about the president is, boy, he really has a dismissive attitude about American voters. Apparently he believes they can be bought, that they are mindless drones who are just going to do whatever the political ads tell them to do.
Well, yeah, and in fact, Hans, you do point out something here that really needs to be, elaborated on. The president, the day after these midterm elections, what was the word from the president and from the White House about all the people who didn't vote? They're incredibly dismissive of those who are currently letting their voice be heard. He thinks that the majority that voted for Republicans in this last midterm were in some way illegitimate, and his way of rectifying that is to, by force of government, mandating the vote. Would that hold up to constitutional muster, by the way?
No, I don't think so at all. In fact, I think if they tried to put in a provision like that, if I filed a lawsuit claiming a violation of my constitutional rights, they're trying to make me associate with people that I'm not interested in associating, and that would be a basic violation of my First Amendment rights.
Great point.
But it is sort of troubling, I think, when you look at the midterm elections. Big decisions were being made in this country. Now, I like the way the elections turned out, but big decisions were being made by 36.4% of the electorate. That's incredibly low compared to some other countries.
Well, it is, but in many ways, it also is a sign that, a lot of folks, like I said, they're just not interested in elections because the country is puttering along, it's moving along. They don't see that there are these huge issues that they've got to go to the polls and make decisions about. On the other hand, if they had candidates who were different than the usual run of candidates, well, then they might get out there and vote.
Yeah. It's also interesting that on one hand, the president would be against anything that requires people to show some kind of ID to prove who they are when they vote. That's too onerous a burden, but he would have you mandatory vote in the election.
This is a great point, Hans. I mean, if it was mandatory and if you didn't vote, there would be a fine. I guess that means you have to prove you are who you are when you go to vote. Maybe this is a backdoor way to get voter ID.
Yeah, I doubt they were thinking about those consequences.
Listen, while we've got you, Hans, because of your work with the Federal Election Commission and also your excellent book, really well-researched book on Attorney General Eric Holder, you have a pretty good understanding of the U.S. Attorney here in the District of Columbia and what their responsibilities are. We spoke yesterday about Ronald Machen, the fact that he's stepping down in the midst of this Vince Gray investigation. But you also wanted to bring up something here about how he pretty much dropped the ball on some of his other responsibilities with regard to the federal government.
Well, yeah, we should all remember his legacy of what I would say is political corruption, and it's this. The U.S. Attorney in D.C., they are the ones responsible for enforcing any contempt citations voted on by Congress. And let's not forget, when Lois Lerner was held in contempt last May, he had the obligation to bring that to a federal grand jury. Federal law says he has to do it. It's not an option. And did he do it? No, he did not do it. So he clearly did not want to help force her to answer questions.
So the U.S. Attorney in the district basically ignored this contempt of Congress order. Can he legally do that? I mean, what's the next step there?
No, he can't. I mean, federal law says he has to take it to a grand jury. But look, if you don't have an attorney general who's willing to tell his subordinate, the U.S. attorney, to do it, there's almost no recourse against that.
This is very interesting.
But we can all be certain that he's on the server story. He's got a big
the email server.
Yeah,
sure,
he's got an investigation going on that. Don't you imagine?
No, I don't.
Well, but this raises. I mean, is this U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia up for Senate confirmation, or does the Attorney General? It is. So maybe this is something that the senators should actually address with whoever the nominee is.
Yeah.
There are two
right.
pending contempt of Congress orders that have been ignored by your predecessor. If you are named U.S. Attorney, will you activate a grand jury for Lois Lerner and for Eric Holder? I would think that should be a deal breaker.
It is a deal breaker, and unless that nominee says, yes, I will, they should not be confirmed.
We are going to try to press that issue. Hans von Spakovsky, thank you so much for joining us,
Hans,
sir.
thanks a lot.
Sure thing.
Let's go to your calls real fast on this. Many of you want to chime in. Mandatory voting. Who could be against that? We'll start with Larry in Fairfax. Larry, you're first up on WMAL.
Hey, good morning, Larry.
Yeah, Brian said that 36% of the people vote. Do you want the other remaining percentage are probably the people that Jesse Waters interviews on Waterworld? Do you want those people voting?
No, I don't, but I do wish that people were more serious about what goes on in the world around them.